Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'd like to talk about constructing business activities when building a business workflow or a process flow and getting the naming of the activities set appropriately. I've seen many workflows where you're expecting an action verb and I get something else that is not easily definable. So I'm going to add this video into the business processes set of videos just to give us a bit of a primer before we get into establishing workflows. So what do we mean by mushy verbs? You have to think about the verb where if I give you this specific verb, so for example, oh, I like handle. So here's the joke that I like to use. So if I copy handle over here, so I have the verb, I need a thing, I need a noun. So what noun should I put in? Like, let's handle mail. Okay. Oh, say I am a postal carrier and I'm handling mail. What does that really mean? Does that mean I've actually delivered it by putting it into a mailbox? Does it mean that I've sorted it or collated it? Or did I pick it up and give it a hug? So it's handled. If I give it a hug, it's handled. So it's not very clear on what's happening. If I go over to things like, okay, reviewing an audit, they might be mushy. Now, that depends on the situation. A review and audit could have a checklist associated with them. So it's very clear to the people who are reviewing. Just say, I want to review, try this example, review. Well, it could be a policy of some sort. Let's say review food safety policy. Now, what that could mean if the context is set properly is that we take the food safety policy and review it. It actually means I'm going through perhaps a restaurant and I'm doing a review of the food safety policy. But to us, that means we're actually doing a sort of check. But the other thing is, well, review the food safety policy. If it's more mushy, then do I actually read the document? Do I execute the items that are on the document? So, what is it that I'm specifically doing? When we get over to something specifically like, okay, pay. Now, if I have pay, this one's actually quite clear. Pay invoice. That's okay. You might say, how do I pay it? So in some of these cases, when we get into workflow modeling, we don't get deep into the hows. That's saved for an attached document or a later deeper dive into the actual particulars of it. But if we're doing level 1, level 2 on the workflows, we're keeping it high level. Just understanding what it is that we want is important. So with that aside, we'll go over. So here's a construct that I have created I call it the rose rings. The idea here is that we're taking this thing, but we're breaking out the mushiness. So let's take an example here. I'm going to take manage. Okay. And let's put manage up here. What is a thing? I used to work in insurance, so let's call it claim. All right. So I'm going to potentially, here we go, manage the claim. Well, manage is mushy, and by mushy, if we can squish it and squeeze out the essence of manage, if you bang it against a wall or something like that, what are the pieces of manage that come out? And what I'm doing here is the way that this circle works, it's a life cycle, starting with there's a creation of the thing, then the operation of the thing, like how do we interact with it, how do the users interact with it, or stakeholders interact with it. I call it the cessation or the stoppage or the closure of the item when we no longer need it anymore. But then there's potentially a resurrection of it. I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, I need to reverse the process or to undo the closure of it. So taking manage, let's blank that out. Create some sticky notes. Okay, the creation of a claim in the context where I work, we call it setting a claim. So when we had set claim, we knew specifically that it was somebody calling in. The part of the set procedure was to determine that it is a new claim. There's no claim on file. That they have a policy, so there's validation that occurs, and we take the information. What was the cause? What was the concern? What's potential correction? What was the item that has broken down? Then we move into an authorization. Okay, so an authorization is made by the claim adjuster when they believe that there's enough information there for them to say, yes, this is a valid claim. We're going to authorize it. What else could they do? Well, that would be in cessation. But let's just go with it. I had that hunch. You're going to say, well, what happens if we don't authorize it? We denied a claim. When we denied a claim, it's over. It's done. Could be resurrected. But let's move on to, well, what else can we do with the claim? What's in the operation of it? Well, another concept is we can settle the claim. So it's authorized, then the actual repair occurs. So it's not the claim that gets repaired. So whatever the item is, the item gets repaired, refurbished, or replaced. Then we get the callback saying, or from whatever system that they collect the information, that the claim has been taken care of, the repair work is done. Then we settle up. It's like, okay, well, how much did that actually cost? Was it within the limits that we authorized? Great, it was. Cool, we can settle it. Other things that potentially can happen, inquire. I'll put that inquire down. That could be customer calling in, and customer saying, what's going on with my claim? I haven't heard back from you. So they make an inquiry against it. Then from, now here's another one, and this may be a debate, but we could pay the claim, and depending on the workflow, the payment could be an actual cessation event. It's like once it's paid, it's done. So you have a conversation with your stakeholders to determine what their process is. In this case, paying wasn't necessarily the cessation to it. We actually had to formally close the claim. We had to see, yes, payment went through, and when the payment has been appropriately applied and we know that the funds have been received, then we'll close the claim. So we get a confirmation that the payment has been issued and it's been received. Therefore, we'll close the claim. Now, if it was wrong, we could have a reopen the claim. That's a possibility. Or a reinstate the claim. Okay. Also, that's also works with policies as well. So again, have a conversation with your stakeholders, agree on the terminology, and this is the power of this particular tool. Is we go around in a clockwise fashion, setting up the specific elements. So this was manage, and we went from manage to all of these items, and that's a life cycle of one of these items. Well, what do we do with this ring on the outside? And this is a bit of a bonus for us to look at. So let's take a sticky note here. Well, I reserve this for the specific personas. So what does this mean? Well, if my, let's see, I got my authorizations by the adjuster. I have a specific person called a claims adjuster. And when the call comes in, the adjuster takes the call, and they don't, is this an authorization call, a settling call? We don't know, but just say it is a setting call. Putting a couple things in here. Now, if the adjuster sets the claim, this sets us up for a specific use case. So if I'm thinking about doing system design, well, for an adjuster to set the claim, They may have a very specific window. If you're thinking the UI on a software interface, that's very different from how the customer sets the claim. For a customer UI, it could be a lot more. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to have a lot of tool tips. The screens are going to be really, really concise and short, just to make sure that that we lead the customer through the process. But the adjusters may have a lot more information that they need, and all that information's on the screen to a point that the customer doesn't need that information. Because once the customer calls in, we could have a call center software that connects the customer information based on the phone number they're calling on and actually applies that automatically to the adjuster's call screen within the software. So different use cases. So when we get to breaking down and perhaps creating user stories out of this, then it's great to have these items here. So same thing goes for this. Could the customer potentially authorize a claim? Well, that is a part of a capability that we may want to create. When it's under a certain autonomy level, the claim can self authorize for a particular customer. If the customer is in good standing, we can do a check on that and make sure that that authorization is actually correct. So this is the rose ring. Again, you can use this. You can put your personas around the outside. Just one more thing is if you just want to thread these through, so I can go adjuster to the authorization, connect it there, and then take another one out of authorization, connect it to the claim, and then we can thread these through so we can check the specific use cases through these threadings. And that sets us up. It's just a very quick way if you're a product owner or a business analyst and you're writing documentation or user stories or requirements on these items. This is just a quick way to take that mushy verb that we didn't quite understand and breaking it down into the more action oriented verbs. So thank you for your attention, and I'll see you in the next video.